cooperation at home and how we can work on teaching adaptive skills like self-dressing, independent skills, things like that at the home, and what skills we can teach and how we can teach them. So, a little bit about me. Can y'all hear me without the microphone? I was afraid I was losing my voice a little. So, that's my hobbies and my fur children there. I got Oscar Mayer, the wiener doll, Rufus, and Chloe. Alright, so went to my niece. I graduated in 2011 with an associate's degree in general studies and arts and humanities. In 2012 with a bachelor's in psychology with a minor in criminal justice. In 2015, master's in applied behavior analysis. Came to BCBA in 2015, and I worked at the St. Nicholas Center since June 1st, 2015. I worked with young ones all the way up to teens, vocal and nonvocal. So, as my mom would say it, she's a MA, BCBA, LBA, MOUSE. So, all the letters. Like, thanks, Mom. Okay, so what are we going to do today? Alright, come on in. So, and yes, I know who those guys are. Big fan of those guys. So, we're going to go over some tips to teaching cooperation, teaching skill strategies like task analysis, chaining behaviors, shaping those behaviors, and how we can use those to teach adaptive skills at home. So where do we need to begin? Well, we need to begin by increasing the child's cooperation, or you'll hear it sometimes called compliance, but cooperation is a better word for it. How well do they cooperate with us teaching? How well do they follow instructions? But how do we increase that cooperation? Well, we need to identify what behavior that we want to see more of. What behavior is, in our opinion, correct or incorrect, and things like that. Especially when it comes to the skills. So putting a sock on your hand when you're getting dressed is not necessarily correct for that skill, but it is correct for making sock puppets. Identify what reinforcers will work and what will be practical to use. Does everyone know what a reinforcer is? Or how to tell if it's a reinforcer? Okay. So when you're using reinforcers, it can't be too big, and it needs to be something that can easily be given or consumed. So like, it won't be 5 minutes of TV, however, it can be like a short little video clip or a short little M&M that goes away real quick that you can continually give. And then we also need to identify the instructions and steps that your child can already complete well. So if he knows how to do one step in the task analysis, we don't need to teach him. He can sail right on through that. Okay, so what exactly is cooperation? So cooperation is the likelihood that the child will follow your instructions. It's the likelihood that he will learn. Now, we can run into some barriers when we're working with cooperation, including if the child has difficulty paying attention, if there's distractors in the room. I'm not going to necessarily give the child, we're not going to learn in a very crowded, noisy environment very well if it's hard for the child to attend. Especially if he didn't hear your instructions. He's not going to cooperate with your instructions, follow him if he didn't hear them. And then he may not have understood them. So we need to make sure that when we give instructions, they are short and sweet and to the point. A few words is better. So instead of, okay, before we do this, we need to pick up our toys, put it in the bin, instead of, okay, let's clean the room. Short. Let's pick up the toys, put them in the box. We want to use very short instructions because they're easier to understand. So let's look at some tips on how we can increase cooperation. And In the back, in your package, you have a activity sheet 7.1. This can kind of help with keeping track. So all the kids have some skills and some instructions that they can already complete. Y'all do have 7.1.
Yeah, 7.2, not 7.1.
This one?
Oh, it's on that.
Yeah, it's on the back of, it should be front and back.
Yeah, it's right around, it's 9.2. It's the back of it.
Oh, okay.
So using that, we can make our lists. So in order to increase the likelihood that your child will be successful with following your instructions, you want to be in close proximity to him or her. So I'm not going to yell across the room if I know he's still working on this one skill. Instead, I'm going to be right next to him. You want to tell them what to do instead of asking. So pick up your toys instead of can you pick up your toys. At the same time, if the skill is new to them, you want to physically guide or help the child to complete it. And we'll go over how we can do that too and figure out our prompts as well. Physically guiding and helping the child is what we call prompting. As the child completes instructions, you want to provide that immediate reinforcement. So you want to make it the biggest deal in the world because he actually is following your instructions. You want to just acknowledge that he's doing correctly. A helpful hint where the activity sheet will come in, you want to start with instructions that are easy and you know your child can do versus a hard one. So if you know your child has difficulty with, let's say, washing dishes, you want to start something easy. Hey, go to the sink and turn on the water. And then we can shape up that behavior and look at how can we wash dishes that way or anything like that. But you want to start off with something easy for the child first. You don't want to go straight into the hard, because then they just get frustrated real quickly and they're done. It's kind of like if you start a math quiz and the hardest problem is the first one. Like, well, I don't like this quiz. So, but how does cooperation help with us learning life skills? Well, without cooperation, it's very difficult to learn new skills. If we're not going to cooperate, if we're not going to listen to instructions, we can't learn anything new. It's going to be very difficult. And the likelihood for some problem behaviors or some barriers to occur can increase. So, okay, we have our cooperation. Now what's next? What's the next skill? What's the next step? So we're going to learn a life skill now. So when we're teaching a life skill, the first thing we need to do is think of, okay, let's think of washing dishes, for instance. How do I perform that skill? So we need to break it down. Oops, wrong way. We need to break it down. What steps are involved? What steps, if any, can your child complete on their own, and where do you need to start when you're teaching? We need to create a task analysis that will help greatly. So, what's a task analysis? So, I have an example. So, task analysis is a checklist, a list of all the steps that are involved in that skill set. So, it can be used with anything. Washing dishes, teeth brushing, getting dressed, fixing your own lunch. It can be as detailed as needed. It can use words, pictures, depending on the learner. So for instance, washing dishes, we have put the plug in, put the dirty dishes in the sink, turn the tap on, fill sink with water, add just enough dish soap, turn tap off, wash dishes, dry dishes with the towel, and put the dirty dishes away, or put the clean dishes away. So the way we do it is we perform the task ourselves, and we can write a list of what all steps are in. So that's the easiest way to do a task analysis, is to complete the skill yourself and then write all the steps. So let's look at why a task analysis is important. Why is it important?
I could really go for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you guys think you can write down some instructions and teach me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Step 1. Get 2 pieces of bread out. Get a butter knife and get some peeling. Take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
No, Dad, with the peanut butter.
I'm just doing what it says. It says take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
You're not making any sense. You already ruined it on purpose.
You know,
So what step did he forget whenever he's making the peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Take the butter knife and spread the bread. Take what and put it on the knife and spread the bread. Forgot a step. And so
I'm hungry. I could really go for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Do you guys think you can write down some instructions and teach me how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Step 1. Get 2 pieces of bread out. Get a butter knife and get some peeling. Take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
No, Dad, with the peanut butter.
I'm just doing what it says. It says take 1 piece of bread, spread it around with the butter knife.
Hold on.
Get some jelly, rub it on the other half of the bread.
No, Dad, open the jelly.
It doesn't say to do that. Put the breads together on top of each other.
and that's kind of an extreme example, but the point is there. Excuse me. If you don't know the steps, how can you teach a child the steps? So we kind of need to break it down into its simple components. So using the bathroom, brushing teeth, how to shower, things like that. It can be broken down as much as possible, as needed for the child. For instance, I use this with one of my kiddos when we're going to the bathroom. It's just what we need to do when we go to the bathroom, and then we're done. Vacuuming. So get the vacuum, plug it in, turn it on, vacuum the hall, or vacuum the room, vacuum the closet. So it can be as detailed and as personal as needed for the child. So where do we need to start when we're teaching those skills? Think of what skills could you teach a child that might help with disruptive behavior, might increase their independency. How do you determine what can you teach? Well, what can get them as most independent? What skills would make the child more independent and not as reliant on you? And what skills make your child seem to be able to do most of the steps but refuses to do or finds it frustrating? So this is what we can use to teach their skills. This is how we determine, okay, what skill can I teach my child? What skill do I need to teach my child? What's going to get them as independent as we can? Or what do they find more frustrating that we can break it down and make it simpler for them? And then, what would the child be motivated to learn? So if the child likes to watch TV, he could probably be motivated to learn how to work the TV, how to find their favorite channel, how to work the guide and find what's on. Or if they like the movie, how to work a DVD player. So, there's activity sheet 9.3a and 9.3b. So this is an example of how you can write down skills, the steps of a skill. So in 3b is an example. So they're using unscrewing the toothpaste. So they're using brushing teeth. Unscrew the toothpaste lids, put toothpaste on the brush, rinse the brush. Brush your bottom left, bottom right, and things like that. And it's breaking that toothbrushing skill down into its bare minimum parts. And that's how you can determine what skill what step your child knows, and what you don't have to teach your child. So if he knows how to unscrew with the toothpaste lid, done. he's got it. Put toothpaste on, he's good. Let's say you run into the issue with brushing the bottom first. How do we brush our teeth? So we can work on that skill. So we know he knows how to do the first three. So we're going to give high reinforcement or high praise for doing that, and we're going to start off with that because he can do it already. That way it's starting with your easier instructions that they have more success with, and it's going out into the harder ones. So how can we teach skills? Well, there's two different ways to teach. There's chaining, and then there's shaping. And we're going to go over a couple of those. So chaining behaviors is whenever we're teaching one behavior concurrent with another, either forwards or backwards. There's two types of chaining. There's forward chain, so we're going to start with the beginning and work our way forward. And then there's backwards, where we're going to do everything for the child and work our way backwards. So whenever you're trying to decide, how can I teach my child, what steps do they already know? So with the toothbrushing, if they know the first three steps, you can go ahead and teach them forward chaining. We're going to start from the beginning and go down. If, let's say, tying shoes. To tie a shoe, if he knows how to tighten it at the very end, he knows the very last step, we can backwards chain it from there. You want to start where the child already has success with. So let's look at forward chaining. What does that entail? You're going to start with the first step of the skill and you're going to work your way down. So you move from the next step. Once the child can consistently complete the prior step. So you don't want to move on until the child has mastered the previous step. If we teach too many steps in a row, the child just gets frustrated. Because this is hard, this is hard, this is hard, this is hard. You want to teach till mastery, and then that becomes easy, and then you go into hard. And so on and so forth. This often can be used when the easiest step for the child is the first one. Or when the easiest step to learn for the child is the first one. So with, let's say with washing our dishes. If the child knows how to turn on the tap and put the plug in, good, we can start that way. If the child can help with putting up the dishes, and he knows where the dishes are, then we can start from the back. It all depends on what is easiest for the child. So, things we typically teach forward chaining with, brushing teeth, washing hands, getting dressed, things like that. Now that we know how to, are there any questions leading up to this? So now that we know how to teach it forwards, let's reverse it and let's back it up. So we're doing backwards chain. So you're going to do, in backwards chain, you're going to do all the steps for the child except the last one. So let's say you're teaching a child how to put a jacket on. So you're going to take the child and help him. You're going to put one arm in, the second arm in, and then if he can pull it down, that's the last step he does. So the next step would be, I'm going to put the first arm in. It's up to him to put that second arm, so I can hold it out, and he can slip his arm in, and then he's just done the last step. It's breaking everything down into its minimum to help the child learn in those small increments. This all wasn't hot. So you're going to teach a child the last step of that skill and work backwards. So dressing can be a form of backwards chaining, like putting on the jacket, one sleeve at a time, tying shoes. I've done with backwards chaining before with success. Here's an example. So So here's an example of some backwards shaping.
We're going to put your sock on. Okay? Scrunch. Toes. Around. Up. Okay?
So the first time she did it all from the child.
Scrunch. Toes. Around. And up. Up.
He did that
Good
last
job. Scrunch. Toes. Around.
The next step.
And up. Good job. Okay, go ahead. Scrunch.
Now we're putting it all together.
Okay. Now what? Toe. Good. Around. Around and up. Good job.
We just put ourselves on by ourselves. So you wouldn't go on to the next step until the child can successfully and consistently do that first step that he learned by himself. But he just put on his sock all by himself. No help from mom. So that's a way that you can backwards shape some. That's a way you can backwards shape some skills. But how do you know which one to use again? You start with whatever step is easiest for your child to learn. If tying shoes, if it's easier for the child to learn to tighten a knot and tighten, you're going to start with the first step. If it's easier for him to tighten the bow at the end, you're going to start with the last step. It's whatever is best and easiest for your child to learn. And this will also help both you and the child feel like you've accomplished something very quickly, especially if you start with that easiest step. You want to begin with whichever step will give your child the quickest access to their reinforcers, their praise, or the success that they've done it by themselves. You don't want to begin with steps that are extremely difficult. This will result in frustration for both you and the child. As the child begins to complete each step, you want to decrease slightly with your assistance, and we're going to go over how to do that too. You want to use differential reinforcement as you go along. So what that means is, if you know the child can consistently do this one skill or this one step, you're not going to give him the same amount of praise as you did for a brand new step. You're going to give him bigger praise for that brand new step mastery. So if you know he can do this, you're going to say, oh, good job. But if he does that brand new step, it's the biggest deal in the world. Yes, you did it. Good job. Excellent. So you're going to use that to your advantage. You're going to make it more valuable to learn the new step and to learn the whole step as a whole. Now, a little word of warning. With learning new behaviors, if the child is used for you to do it all himself, you may run into what's called some possible extinction behaviors. He's used to you doing it for him. So you may run into some of those problem behaviors, like I don't want to. That's where building up that cooperation comes in. The higher you get your cooperation, the more success you can have with teaching the child a new skill. And you just want to hold your ground. Oh, we're going to do this, and you're going to do it by yourself, and it's going to be awesome. So you want to just have high reinforcement ready and just reinforce for that cooperation when needed. So if the child is trying, if he's having difficulty with, but he's trying, you're still going to give him reinforcement because he's trying. Okay, so we went over chaining. Excuse me. We went over chaining with forwards and backwards. Now, we can complete each of the basics of the step, but now we're just going to shape it up to its final form. So, let's say he has success with putting his shirt on, but he puts it on backwards. It's on, but we just need to shape up how can we better do this, how can we put it on correctly. And that's where these shaping behaviors come in. So shaping involves prompting the child and fading out those prompts until the child is independent. So what she did with the sock, she shaped up those behaviors. She backwards shaped them and she shaped them up to where he was independent. So what is a prompt? A prompt is assistance to help the child to complete the step. It can go from physical to verbals. What she did in the video was, first was she physically prompted the child to pull up the sock. And then all the way at the end, she was just using verbal prompts. So the idea is to fade yourself out so the child can be independent. So we use prompting to help them learn better, to help them have success. If something's difficult, we're gonna help them. So prompting is when you give the child physical guidance and assistance to complete a step. For brand new skills, you start with what we call the most invasive and fade to least invasive. Now we call them invasive because we're in the child's space. We're physically helping them to do it. For skills that you know your child can do, you're going to start with the least invasive and move on up. So when I say most invasive, I'm talking about that full physical assistance. So we're going to hand in hand do this step together. As the child's success with that skill increases, you're going to go down. So right here is most invasive to least. So as your child has more success, you're going to go from full physical to what we call partial physical. So a full physical may start with hand in hand. Partial physical may start with, okay, I'm just going to guide your arms and kind of imitate what you're supposed to be doing, but I'm not going to hand in hand you, I'm just going to do your arms. And then modeling is a good way to teach as well. So like putting the jacket on, I can put my jacket on at the same time you can, and I'm modeling how to do it. And then your verbals are your indirect verbals. So direct verbal would be telling the child exactly what we need to do. So we have our shirt on, now we need to put our jacket on. And indirect would be, okay, we have our shirt on, it's cold outside, what do we need to grab next? A jacket. I'm not telling him exactly what to do, but I'm indirectly telling him I'm suggesting it. But he gets the answer by himself. Alright, so some tips on prompting. You want to use only what's necessary. You don't want to over-prompt because then the child could possibly become what we call prompt dependent. He's just going to wait for you to do it for him. So you don't want to over-prompt. So you want to use just enough to increase his success and for you to fade out. And you want to allow for more learning. You also don't want to use the same prompt every time. That's where that prompt reading comes in. So if I use full physical every single time, the child's not necessarily learning how to do something. He's just learning if I just do this, someone's going to come help me. So we want to be sure that we're fading them out as the success increases. So, in our, I believe in our 9.3b, go back all the way. So, you see how he can independently do rinse the brush, not introduce. Well, I introduced it here since I know he can do it. So this, you see how there's a stair stepper? That's how we know when can we go on to the next prompt. If I'm using this prompt continually, I want to fade it out. You want to lessen your prompts over time, and the child can become more successful. Prompting can be used for each step or just for the first step, depending on your child. Sometimes like he'll need prompting for the first step, and then he'll take off. It all depends on how your child learns. So, for instance,
gonna take off over to your clothes, okay? Okay, so hat off. And put it on the couch.
So she's using what's
Okay, now,
called gestures.
unzip your clothes. That's right. Unzip. Watch mommy. Off. And put it on the couch. Good. Okay, now, scarf off. Good. And put it on the couch. Good listening. That was good. Okay.
So she used a variety of different prompts. She used modeling, taking her own jacket off with him. She used gestures, hat off, put on the couch. She used the physical prompting to unzip the jacket. And then she also used, at the end, reinforcement for just that cooperation. Good listening, awesome job, I love how you did it. Things like that. So you don't want to necessarily just reinforce for the completing of the skill, you want to reinforce for him cooperating, for him working with you as well. Okay, so these are some examples of how can we track how our prompts are going. So you should have 10.1b and 10.3c. All of these worksheets I find it using what's called the Ruby Parent Training Curriculum. I find it has some good resources. It helps, it has homework and things like that. So, if we look at it, let's say we're going to start with, let's go back to our toothbrushing. So unscrew the lid, toothpaste on the brush, rinse, so on and so forth. If I know the child can do unscrewing the lid by himself, I can put independent. But let's say I have to full physically help him rinse the toothbrush. Well, the next time, I'm not going to full physical, I'm just going to partial physical. And then after that, it can be more of a gesture. You want to be sure that can help you track what prompts you're using and how you're fading it, if you're fading it successfully. And then you should see his independence and the amount of pluses go up as you're doing it. Okay, so we're teaching new skills. It can get frustrating. How can we increase the success in our teaching? Again, start simple. You want to start with that easiest task for your child to do. And because then he'll get that taste of, this is awesome, I can do it by myself. If you start with that hard thing, he's going to be, no way, I don't want no part of this. So you want to start simple. Make it easier for the child. The child is more likely to continue with the learning process if the initial tasks are easy. Teach in a distraction-free zone. So if you have the TV going and you're trying to teach teach a skill to the child, it's probably not going to be successful because he's probably watching the TV and not cooperating. So you want to start off at least in that distraction-free zone. You want to be mindful of when you're teaching that child. So you don't want to teach them whenever you're in a hurry to get somewhere. You don't want to teach them something new when they are tired or hungry. If you or your child are tired or hungry, then he's just going to focus on the fact, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I don't want to do this right now. And you can open up that with possible problem behaviors or not cooperation, anything like that. So what you want to do is just, for instance, you can teach washing dishes or help washing dishes after supper. It's a good time to do it. Or teach getting dressed when they're going out to the park, but you're not on a schedule, you're not in a hurry. You want to make sure you have ample time to teach the skill. You also want to reinforce reinforcers to promote learning. Without reinforcers, the behavior's not going to go up. So you're not going to see more of what you want to see without that reinforcer. Reinforcer can be, like I said, praise. It can be a child's favorite video. It can be M&Ms. Anything that the child likes. You got to make it worth its while to learn. And you also want to utilize what's called differential reinforcement. So if he's doing a completed task, you want to give him a little bit of something. But if he learns a brand new skill, that's the biggest skill in the world. So like I said, I use what's called this Ruby curriculum parent training for disruptive behavior. I really enjoy it. It maps out everything that you need. It has those homework activities in there and things like that. And you can take those with you, and so we can look at how can we create a task analysis and how can we use that to track our prompting and how we're learning. So we can actually fill one out together. So we have about 20 minutes. So we can look at task and analyzing a skill and fill one out together. And we can practice that with this worksheet. So we're gonna turn to 9.2. And then we can look at, okay, so let's look at what skill we can look at teaching the child. What skill do you think we can look at teaching a child? What's a good skill to teach them? Tying a shoe? Yeah, so let's practice tying a shoe. So, what we can look at, so 9.2 and 0.3a go hand in hand. So now that we know we are going to teach him how to tie a shoe, we can list the steps of the skill. So what's the first step to tying a shoe? What do we need to do first? So we're on birch. So we're on that one. So we're on 9.3. So what's the first step in tying a shoe? We have to what? Grab the laces and hold them separate. Then what's the next step? We have the laces in our hands and we have to do what? We have to cross them. So, laces in our hands, cross the laces, then what do we need to do? We need to knot them, make one go under the other. Okay, so we got them. One's gone under the other, then we need to do what? Pull it tight. Then we make our little hoop, or our rabbit ear, whatever you want to call it. So we have our rabbit ear. What do we need to do next? Make sure they've done it. Okay, we wrapped our lace. Then we need to put our lace through the bottom. And then we pull. We pull and tighten. So we just created a task analysis for tying our shoes. It's just as simple. easiest way to do it, like I said, doing it yourself. Thinking back, oh, how do I do this? And then just writing down each of the steps. So, now we have that task analysis completed. What step could we start with? So, let's say our child can do grabbing the knots, grabbing the laces with both hands. Let's say he can do that first step. So, if we're going to start with the first step, what kind of chaining are we going to use? Forward or backwards? Forwards. Since we can, the easiest step for that child to do is that first step, we're going to start forwards chaining. So, what reinforcers could you give to your child to reward for his progress? So, what are some reinforcers that your children like, or what could be good? And remember, it's got to be small and it's got to be quick. So, praise is a pretty good one if your child works well for your praise. M&M's is a good one, or any type of small candy can be a good one. Excuse me. Sometimes I've seen some children get excited just the fact that they did it themselves. Especially if you're excited for them. So, if we're going to start with that first, so we're going to start with that forward chaining. So during what naturally occurring times could you practice this skill? When is the best time to teach a child tying shoes? In the morning, getting ready for school, going out to play, anything like that. Because you don't want to randomly say, oh, let's put on our shoes and we're just going to walk around the house. You want to make it as natural as possible. But on the other hand, so during what structured times can you practice this skill? So you could be walking around the house and, oh, let's go outside. But to go outside, we gotta put our shoes on. So you're contriving that situation. You're making that situation happen. So that's a little bit more of a structured skill, structured time. And you have all the time in the world to teach it because you're just going outside. You're not on the time crunch. So, with that being said, now we can look at, okay, how are we going to use our prompts and fade our prompts out? So this skill, this worksheet can go. So the reason these are all labeled a little bit weird, these are 3 different sections coming together, going hand in hand. So now we can use these steps and move them into our response prompt. Our 10.1. There we go. So now we can transfer those steps into our prompting homework. So let's say the first thing we're going to do, he can grab the laces, so he can do it by ourselves. So I usually put an I for independent, so he can do that by himself. I know he can do that. So the next thing would be to cross the laces. And I'll need to probably full physically prompt him to do it, so help him, hand in hand guide him to do it. So if I do that, I'm going to put physical prompt. If you look at the top, it has all the acronyms and the abbreviations that you'll need. That'll help you kind of shorthand track what you're doing. So the first time I'm going to teach this, I'm probably going to use that physical prompt. The next time, I'm going to use that partial physical, and so on and so forth. So what you want to see is kind of a diagonal line of your prompts. You want to see mastered first, and then the fact that you're fading your prompts out. Did I explain that well? Is that making sense to everyone? So now let's say I he can pull the laces taut at the end. So if I'm gonna start at the very back, what kind of chaining is that? Backward chaining. So I'm gonna start from that forward, from that in. So I'm gonna do everything for that child except the last step, and he's going to complete it. And then moving forward, I'm gonna do everything but that second to last, and he's gonna do the last two, and so on and so forth until he's doing it independently. So, we can use prompting in everyday situations to teach skills like getting dressed. We can use chaining, we can use shaping. I was about to say, is that my timer? We can use chaining, we can use prompting, and it all goes hand in hand with each other. So we use our prompting to assist the child, and we want to fade it out so he can have the independence he needs. Because we don't want to do it for him all the time, and we want to get him as independent as we can. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Thank y'all for coming in and seeing. This is it's kind of my first one solo. So thank y'all for coming in and seeing. If you have any questions or if you wanted to learn a little bit more about the curriculum that I use during my parent trainings, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have or anything like that. But I hope y'all are y'all enjoying the conference so far? Very. I thought the lunch talk was very cool. I enjoyed it.